Hey guys, my name is Roms Von Wolf. At least that's what I call myself in Mechwarrior Online. You guys can find me there if you ever want to chat, hang out, whatever. But actually, I'm going to make this video to kind of address sort of a basic starter strategy, sort of the basic starter strategy for like reasonably new players to Mechwarrior Online. I've actually created a list of rules, like basic combat rules, that will help you if you're fairly new to Mechwarrior, or even even if you've been playing it for a little while. Some of these rules might be helpful to you. But yeah, basically what I've compiled is sort of like the most essential, the kind of a list of the core combat essentials if you want to survive and do well in Mechwarrior Online, because it's a challenging game. There's a lot of depth to this game, and it's pretty cool. Like, I'm really enjoying everything that the designers have done in this game. Anyway, guys, I'm just going to kind of start it off here. Rule number one. All right, rule number one. You are the member of a wolf pack. You should think of it in those terms, right? The members of a wolf pack, they work together, they hunt together, they are strongest together. If one of them gets separated and comes up against a rival wolf pack, then it really doesn't matter too much how skillful that separated member of the wolf pack is. He's probably going to get destroyed, like just obliterated, quickly, mercilessly, and just without much of a chance to fight back or survive. Now, as I get further and further into Mechwarrior, there are lone wolf strategies that do work very well, but you have to really know the game extremely well if you kind of want to solo away from your group. For the most part, you're going to want to be sticking with your pack. That excludes obviously light mechs. Light mechs are in a category of their own. They're able to get out there and scout around, and they're able to avoid a lot of damage if under fire, because they're so fast and they're small and they're hard to hit. They can get into a bad situation and they can get out of it. So if you're light mech, this rule doesn't necessarily apply to you. You should get out there. You should go and locate the position of the enemy so that your team knows where to converge upon. But if you are medium, heavy assault mech, you should be sticking with your pack. You should be looking at your map. The first thing you do when you start a new game is look at your map. Look where you are. Look where your lance is. Look where your friendly lances are, and try to figure out where a good point to converge with your team is. So rule number one: you're the member of a wolf pack, and stick with your pack. All right. Rule number two, and this is basically, when you can see the enemy, they can see you too. All right. If you can see them, they can see you, for the most part. If you're trying to be sneaky, if you're trying to like poke your head around the corner, and you're looking straight down and you see an enemy, enemy mechs, but maybe they're facing a little bit that way or a little bit this way. General rule of thumb: even if they might not be looking directly at you, you're going to be popping up on one of their radar sets, and therefore you're going to be popping up on all of their radar. So if you can see them, chances are really high that they can also see you. So don't think that you're stealthier and sneakier, popping your head around like corners and trying to get in a sneaky shot. Don't think that you're stealthier than you actually are. All right, you're gonna find when you pop your head around the corner, oftentimes before you can even see what is around the corner, you're going to be under all sorts of enemy fire. So basically, a basic good rule of thumb is expect your enemy always to know where you are. The exceptions to this kind of rule is if you know how to use cover really well, if you know the landscape well, if you know the position of the enemy, you can obviously stay out of their line of sight, off their radar, and you can actually you can move around fairly well concealed. But if you're just getting started in the game, you won't really necessarily know where the enemy is. You won't really know where the lines of sight are. And like I say, it's a good rule of thumb is if you can see them, they can see you, and expect them to be around every corner. Expect them to be watching for you. All right, and look at where your team is. Plan so that you're not the only one sticking your head around the corner or popping your head up over a hill, because that's just going to open you up to all of the enemy team's fire, and even the heaviest mech under like fire from 3 or 4 or 5 enemy mechs is just going to get wrecked. So you're going to be in bad shape. All right, rule number 3: if you can't see them, they can still see you. All right, it's a little variation on the second rule. Expect them to have a line of sight on you. Try to use cover. Try to look at the map and figure out where your team is. Decide from the map where there is a good amount of like cover. Like if your team is all behind you, then you don't really need to watch out behind you too much because your team has your back. You know, if your team's to your left, the enemy's probably not, you're not going to need to worry about the enemy coming from the left. But if you have nobody, ahead of you, nobody to the right of you, then basically expect the enemy to be in either of those locations, and you should be moving under cover, which will protect you from enemy fire from those locations, or you should be moving in a way which will provide cover quickly if you come under fire. So try to plan your maneuvers around the battlefield so that you are near cover if needed, so the cover is available if needed, or that you're actually just always traveling under cover from different directions that you might come under attack. All right, rule number 4: a moving target takes less damage. Become a moving target. All right, it may be easier to line up your shot and to aim more precisely. Aim your shot more precisely and hit your enemy in a location easier if you stand still. But when you're standing still, you're also an easier target. So when you're shooting and you're holding still, you're basically presenting a huge target of opportunity to the enemy. Maybe not the enemy you see, but maybe one just out of your line of sight, to your right, to your left, behind you, so you don't really know. A moving target takes way less damage. So try to be a moving target most of the time. Even if you're undercover, even if you think you're safe, move back and forth a little bit undercover. Try not to be stationary, because a stationary mech is easy to line up and hit in its most critical spot. And you can actually, I've one-shotted Jaeger mechs from behind because they've been standing still, and I just pick out like their left or right torso, and they're using an XL engine, and I like unload with like 8 lasers on a blackjack, and I just one-shotted them just because they let me have that perfect shot in that amount of time because they're just standing still, So yeah, be a moving target whenever possible. Moving targets take less damage. All right, rule number 5: do not be an obstacle to your team. This happens to me. This happens way too much, all the time, really. What happens oftentimes in battle is that your team and the enemy team will sort of arrive at choke point. That is a space where you have your team on one side and the enemy team on the other side, and your team mate will try to be getting shots on their team, and their team will try to be getting shots on your team. What happens usually is that because mechs take up space, mechs are big. Usually there's not enough space for all 12 members of your team, or even necessarily 4 or 5 members of your team to kind of have enough space to maneuver and also take shots. Because a mech needs some space to take a shot and then get to cover, so it doesn't take a lot of damage from the counter volley. So if there's enough space, like tangibly enough space for 6 mechs, but none of them can move around very well. They're all just like big, standing, immobile targets, right? So you have to be able to move around, and you have to have like a little bit of space to sort of more safely attack the enemy at this choke point. Now, what I see happen a lot is guys want to get into the fight. They want to start doing damage. They want to feel useful or whatever. And what happens to me a ton is dudes will run directly in my line of fire. Like I'll have a pretty good spot picked out. I might be the first to arrive, and I'll have a good little corner picked out, and it's got some cover, and I can peek my head over, take some shots, get back under cover, wait for my weapons to recycle, do it again, But what happens is these like eager, new pilots come running directly in front of me, and where I might have like a perfect shot lined up, and I might be right about to like knock a dude out because he's showing me his back or whatever, and then like a friendly pilot comes running up directly in front of my line of fire, blocks my shot, and maybe even almost gets himself shot in the process. I see this happening all the time. Dudes running right into my line of fire. So pay attention to your teammates' line of fire. If you have friends that are engaging at a choke point, don't go running up directly in front of them, because you're going to be taking away whatever opportunities they have to make a good shot on the enemy, and you're going to just be exposing yourself to like a lot of enemy fire, because they're probably in a good position to be undercover. They're probably at the most advanced position to be undercover that can be, right? And if you go in front of them, then you're becoming an obstacle to their line of fire. So don't get in the way of friendly fire, and don't get in the way of friendly retreat. And what I mean by that is if a friendly mech is engaging at a choke point, and he's getting behind cover, and then he's recycling his weapons and getting out of cover and taking a shot and getting behind cover again, and this is what a lot of the game revolves around. It's sort of this kind of peekaboo engagement strategy. But if you suddenly arrive behind your friendly mech, like a friendly mech that's engaging at a choke point, and he's trying to back up, and now you're blocking his path, and he can't get back, like he's stuck, and the enemy's just like unloading on him. Basically, you just handed the enemy team like a member of your team, just because you stood behind him and he couldn't get under cover. So don't stand close behind your partners if they're going to be needing to back up. And watch what your friends are doing. Like if you're in a really tight spot and you need to be close together, watch what your friend is doing. Don't be all concerned about engaging the enemy. Watch what your friend is doing, and if he's engaging and he needs to back up, you better be able to back up faster than he can, so you don't block his way, or don't stand so close behind him. All right. Rule number 6: you will take damage. All right. In this game, mechs take damage. That's why they have armor. What you need to be thinking about is how to mitigate the damage that you're going to take. All right. So you have critical sections of your mech. Certain sections which hold your weapons. Certain sections which hold your engine. That's either your center torso or your left and right torso if you have an XL engine. And you need to be watching which sections of your mech are taking damage. And if you have an XL engine and your left torso is all shot up, you need to protect that left torso. You need to mitigate damage by taking shots and then torso twisting and taking any counter fire on a section of your mech which is stronger. Certain mechs have really great big arms. They're just like really good shield arms. And other mechs have like little tiny arms. But if you have like a good mech with big arms, you can oftentimes twist your arm in the way of incoming fire and use your arm as a shield. Like some mechs have all their weapons in their torso and don't really even need their arms. Basically, on some mechs, arms are just like a shield. So if you have a mech that doesn't really need its arms, then use its arms. Like torso twist all the way 90 degrees as you're running away, so that you take damage to the arms and not to your vulnerable locations. So yeah, learn how to mitigate damage, and just know that you will take damage in Mechwarrior. I don't think I've ever played a game where I haven't taken any damage. And survival is not about necessarily not taking damage or taking less damage. It's about mitigating the damage that you take. All right, because a mech at its most vulnerable location, let's not include the head, but let's say the rear center torso, or the rear left or right torso in the case of an XL engine. At the most vulnerable location of, like, say, a medium or heavy, light heavy mech, you might have 20, 30, 40 points of armor and internal structure. That's basically one shot from 2 autocannons or 2 autocannon 20s or a couple of PPCs. One or two shots from any sort of heavy weapons platform. So at its most vulnerable location, a mech might have, like I say, maybe 40 points of armor before its destruction. Even a heavy mech might have 40 points of armor before its destruction. But if you take into account all of the armor on a mech, legs, center, left, right, back, arms, head, if you take into account and add up all of the armor on a mech, actually, like a mech probably has, anywhere between 300 and 500 points of armor, right? Maybe 300 and 450 points of armor, something like that. So if you were to try to shoot through 300 points of armor, that would take a hell of a long time. If you only need to shoot through 40 points of armor to destroy a mech by choosing your sections very carefully, then that's a couple good shots. But if you need to shoot through 300 points of armor, you're going to be basically, if you're using like lasers, you're going to be unloading everything you have, and you're going to be cooling down entirely, and you're going to be unloading everything you have, and you're going to be cooling down entirely. And the whole process is going to take probably a couple minutes or so, or maybe more. Probably more than a couple minutes to actually destroy every bit of armor on a mech. So if you learn how to mitigate damage well to all the different sections of your armor, then you're going to have a lot more survivability in a fight because you got a lot of armor. The trouble comes when you start taking damage only in one specific location. All right, so rule number 7. This game is not about doing the most damage. Doing the most damage isn't going to win the game, just kind of like I was previously talking about. You might do 400 points of damage, but it's all to the same mech, and he doesn't, if he isn't destroyed from it, then that's not really effective, is it? The most effective type of damage you can do is surgical damage. Like, okay, yeah, you can soften up enemy mech if that's the only shot you've got. If you got a long distance shot and you can't really get too precise or whatever, if you have scatter weapons, you can soften up a mech for your team. But the most effective type of damage is the most surgical type of damage. And in order to get surgical, you have to, ideally, you have to get a target lock and you have to get some targeting data. First off, most of the mechs you engage won't be at full armor. They'll already have taken some damage. So a mech might have perfect armor everywhere, except its left torso might be nearly destroyed. And this is what I watch for a lot. Like I look for the left and right torso, or whichever section of the mech is damaged. And then if you can do that surgical damage, if you can hit the weak spot, or if you can just keep hitting the same spot, then you'll be able to destroy the enemy really, really quickly. Right? It's like I say, it's like doing 40 points of damage or doing 400 points of damage. There's like 10 times difference in damage, and each mech has either 40 points of armor or 400 points of armor, depending on how surgical you get. So the more surgical damage, the more effectively you can take enemy team members out of the fight. And the faster you take enemy team members out of the fight, the less opportunity they have to damage your team. Right? So take them out fast. Be surgical. Rule number 8. Look at the map. Watch the map. Know where your team is. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but know where your team is. Know where the enemy team is. All right. Rule number 9. Rule number 9 I have the same as rule number 8. I must have typed that in wrong. But basically, rule number 9 also mentions to pay attention to where your battle lines are. Like, where are your friends? Where is your defense line? Where is your fallback, area? Where do you have protection? Where are you sticking your neck out? Right? If your enemy is just a little, if your friendly team is just like a little ways back here, and you pop your head out a little ways, forward, and you're the first mech that the enemy team sees, you're in trouble. Unless you're using really good cover, you're going to get focus fired and probably knocked out of the fight really fast. So know where your team is, know where your battle lines are, know where you have protection. And yeah, that's actually it. That's it for my first set of kind of basic mech combat strategy. I've got some more. I'm going to do some more advanced tactical combat videos soon, but I thought I'd start here. And I hope you guys like this video. If you do like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel, and I'll talk to you more soon about MechWarrior Online.